When we think about a company's environmental impact, we usually picture smokestacks, right? Factory buildings. But what if I told you that's just the tiniest sliver of the real story? The biggest impact is almost always hidden from view. Okay, let's get into it.
It's kind of wild, but for most businesses, the emissions they produce themselves are just a tiny fraction of their total carbon footprint. The vast majority? It comes from their value chain. We're talking the raw materials they buy, the trucks and ships they use, and even what you do with their products after you buy them. It's this massive, interconnected web.
And yeah, that brings us to the big, tricky question. If you're a company trying to do the right thing, how on earth do you even begin to measure emissions that are happening in someone else's factory? Or in a delivery truck you don't even own? It seems almost impossible, doesn't it?
Well, that's exactly the journey we're going on. We're stepping outside the factory gates to try and map a company's entire world of influence. And to do that, you can't just wing it. You need a guide, a proper, standardized map that everyone agrees on.
And that map is the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. Seriously, think of it like the global rulebook for counting carbon. It's the framework that lets companies, even entire countries, measure and manage their emissions in a way that's consistent, so you can actually compare apples to apples. It takes a really chaotic problem and gives it structure.
So the protocol breaks this whole complex world down into 3 clear territories, or what they call scopes. Scope 1, that's the easy part. It's the direct emissions from stuff the company owns or controls, like the fuel burning in their own furnaces or their company cars. Scope 2 covers the energy they buy, so the emissions from the power plant that generates their electricity. And then there's Scope 3, which is, well, basically everything else. To really see the difference, Scope 2, over on the left, that's the power plant generating electricity for your company. It's one step removed, right? But Scope 3 on the right, that is the entire chain, from digging raw materials out of the ground all the way to a customer eventually tossing the product. It is vast, and it is where the real action is. So let's dive into that hidden world.
Welcome to the hidden world of Scope 3. You'll see that for most companies, this isn't just a part of their carbon map, it is the map.
I mean, this slide just says it all, doesn't it? Look at that. For a typical company, a staggering 75%, 3/4 of its entire carbon footprint is Scope 3. The things they have the most direct control over, Scopes 1 and 2, often make up just 1/4 of their total impact. This is exactly why you just can't ignore the value chain.
Now, to make sense of this huge category, the GHG protocol neatly splits it in 2. You've got upstream activities, which is all the stuff that happens before a product gets made. Think suppliers, raw materials, shipping them to the factory. Then you have downstream, which is everything that happens after the product leaves, like distribution, how customers use it, and what happens to it at the end of its life.
And the impact here can be absolutely mind-blowing. Get this, the chemical company BASF looked at just one of their upstream categories, the goods and services they buy, and found that a whopping 93% of those emissions came from the raw materials they purchased. Just think about that. It means changing the materials they buy could have a way bigger impact than almost anything they do inside their own factories.
Okay, so if Scope 3 is that important, the obvious question is, how do you actually measure it? This is where we get practical. It's time to open up the Carbon Accountant's Toolkit and see what instruments we have to map out this crazy terrain.
All right, the first tool in the kit is a fantastic place to start. It's called the spend-based method. You basically look at your financial records, see how much you spent on, say, business travel, and multiply that by an industry average emissions factor. It's not going to be perfect, but it is a super fast way to find the big emission hotspots in your supply chain.
The next tool lets us create a much more refined map. It's the hybrid method, and it's exactly what it sounds like, a mix. You might get some real specific energy data from your biggest suppliers, but then use those trusty industry averages to fill in the gaps for things like transportation. It's a big step up in accuracy.
And finally, we have the gold standard, the supplier-specific method. This is where you go out and get primary, real-world data directly from your suppliers, their actual Scope 1 and 2 emissions data for the specific things you buy from them. It's definitely the most work, but it gives you the most accurate and actionable map you can get.
So let's make this real with a t-shirt example, taken right from the GHG protocol's own guidance. Let's say you're using that hybrid method. You get the specific Scope 1 and 2 data from your t-shirt supplier, that's 3,000 kilograms of CO2. Then you use industry data for the cotton, the transport, and the waste. And when you add it all up, bam! You see right away that the material inputs are by far the biggest piece of the puzzle. This is the kind of insight that lets you make real changes. Okay, so we've seen that mapping all of this is pretty complex, but it's totally possible. So why do it? What's the real value for a business to go on this massive carbon accounting quest?
Well, first, it helps you find risks that were completely hidden before. I mean, what if your whole business depends on a material that's super carbon intensive and that country is about to slap a huge carbon tax on it? You need to know that. Mapping Scope 3 is like a stress test for your business in a world that's getting serious about climate.
Second, it can unlock some serious cost savings. Here's a little secret. Carbon emissions are very often a sign of waste. Wasted energy, wasted materials, inefficient shipping routes. So when you find an emissions hotspot in your supply chain, you've usually found a place where you can get more efficient and save money.
And third, it's all about reputation. In today's market, transparency is everything. Being able to stand up and report on your full carbon footprint builds an incredible amount of trust with investors, with customers, and with your own employees. It shows you're actually taking this seriously.
And look, this isn't just theory. Check out this quote from the energy company PSGE. After they finished their Scope 3 inventory, they said it gave them way more clarity on their risks and opportunities. It gave them insights that actually helped shape their business strategy. It's powerful stuff.
So that kind of brings us to a final thought here. We've seen how one company can map its own little world. But just imagine for a second, what if every company did this? If the entire global economy had this kind of transparency, what new ideas, what new efficiencies could we possibly unlock together?
And that's our journey into mapping the hidden world of a company's carbon footprint. Hey, if you found this explainer useful, make sure you like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stuff that matters. Thanks for watching.